A juror's job is to search for the truth. The truth, it does not change. This trial is about the homicide of Joey Carnett. Last summer, July 18th, 2024, in the city of Appleton, off of Northland Avenue. John Pfeffer and Christy Cleland had known each other for about 15 years or so and were dating. That night, they were headed to Joey's house to play games and hang out. Joey was engaged to John's good friend, Samantha Krebs, the defendant in this case. John and Sam had known each other for a very long time, somewhere over 15 years. She was described like a sister to him in some ways, and in other ways, there was a romantic interest at times. They were both John Pfeffer and Samantha Krebs from the Wisconsin Rapids area. Even though Christy, who was dating John, had known him for a long time too, she had never met Sam or Sam's boyfriend, or actually fiance, Joey. So when Christy and John were headed over to Joey's house, Christy hadn't met Sam and hadn't met Joey. On the way to Joey's house, John was driving. Christy and John were listening to music, and John missed a couple calls from Samantha Krebs, the defendant. He realized he missed those calls when he was walking up to Joey's apartment right before they were going to enter. We know that Christy and John arrive at Joey's apartment at 9:46. When Christy and John arrive, they get buzzed up through one of the doors, like often happens in an apartment complex. They walk up a few of the steps, and Joey's apartment is right off to the left. John, who knows them, he goes first. He walks through the door, and he's followed by Christy. And that is where the truth begins to get twisted. That's where the stories diverge, where the truth diverges, and where your job truly begins. John's primary response, John Pfeffer, his primary response is to protect his friend, Samantha Krebs, the defendant, not rendering aid to Joey, not calling 911, but to protect Samantha. Immediately upon entering the apartment, Christy, who doesn't know either one, sees Joey lying on the kitchen floor, and she sees some blood. Christy is going to talk about how she had some nursing experience, so she begins to try to render aid. But it doesn't look good. You'll hear how she thought it already didn't look good. He was pale. At one time he tried to get up. He was struggling to breathe. His pulse was weak as he laid there, and he went unconscious. She tried to grab paper towel from the kitchen to absorb the blood and apply pressure. And she was trying to do what she could for Joey, who she had never met until that day, but it was too late. You'll hear that there wasn't a lot of blood coming out, but she knew it wasn't good, and he didn't look good. You'll hear testimony from Dr. Kelly, who's a forensic pathologist, who will testify that he conducted the autopsy after Joey Carnett passed away, and that Joey's heart was punctured by a knife, just in the lower portion of his heart, where the entry right underneath his kind of chest area, under the left breast, there was a puncture wound, and it was deep, and it went to his heart. And it filled the sac portion of his heart, and he bled to death internally. Now, it's not until Sam leaves the apartment and starts driving away at 9:52 that John ever picks up the call to 911. Remember, they arrived there, you'll hear, at 9:46. You'll hear testimony that John called 911 at 9:54, over 7 minutes after arriving. 7 minutes quicker, Joey could have been provided medical care. And in that 911 call, John Pfeffer says, "I think Joey fell on a knife." The knife is put in the sink. At 9:59, the Appleton Police Department responds. Officer Lee was dispatched to Joey's apartment, and when he responds with another officer named Officer Thor. And they find Joey Carnott lying on the kitchen floor of his apartment with Christy rendering aid and trying to put pressure on that stab wound just underneath his left breast area. Officer Lee cuts off Joey's shirt and they apply a chest seal to stop what blood is coming out. And Officer Thor sees the knife in the sink. You'll hear testimony that the Appleton Police Department evidence group responded, and Fallon Garish is a forensic evidence specialist. She'll testify that she and her partner, Nicole DePlane, who is also a forensic evidence specialist, processed the scene. Fallon will testify that she collected the knife that was in the sink that John Pfeffer had put in there, and it was about 5 inches long. There is also another knife that was in the dishwasher that was about 8 inches long that was under a bunch of dishes in the dishwasher, but she collected that one too. Both of those knives, you'll hear testimony, were sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab for testing. Amber Lynn works at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. She is a DNA analyst, and she will testify that she tested that 5-inch knife that John Pfeffer had put in the sink, and she tested it for DNA. The blade of the knife that entered into Joey's chest and punctured his heart comes back with his DNA. The handle on the knife comes back with both Joey and Sam's DNA. They both lived there. They both would have access to the knives, which Amber will discuss and explain. And Dr. Kelly said the wound when he saw the knife brought down for the autopsy, that Amber Lynn test that has Joey's DNA on the blade, is consistent with the type of injury that Joey Carnott had. You'll hear from 2 residents at the apartment complex, Shabelle Aguirre and Rhonda Stuckzander, who were home that evening and neighbors of Joey's and didn't hear anything. While officers were at the scene when they first responded, Gold Cross and the Appleton Police Department, or Gold Cross and the Appleton Fire Department also respond. And they too come and begin rendering aid, and they put a machine on Joey that provided chest compressions in the hopes of trying to save him while they were tending to him. Despite their best efforts, Joey passed away while they were there, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. While emergency aid was responding, the Appleton police officers are standing with Christy Cleland and John Pfeffer, who were there when law enforcement arrived. And you'll see video of John busy on his phone, on his smartphone. As he exits, you'll hear testimony how he gets a call. Sam's calling him while he's exiting the apartment, and he says he's with law enforcement. Sam, the defendant, the one who left. A short time later, she calls again. This time, Officer Felmer is standing with John Pfeffer. And John Pfeffer tells Sam on the call that he's standing with law enforcement. And she's talking to him, he's talking to her, and he gives Officer Felmer the phone with Sam on the other end. Before he does that, John tells Samantha that he's with officers so that she knows. And Officer Felmer gets on the phone, talks to Sam, and you will hear that call. You will listen to her demeanor, the comments she makes, the way she responds. Samantha is asking Officer Felmer, what's going on? Just a little bit after she left. What's going on? She says, I'm at a friend's. He says, can you come back? She's like, well, what's going on? And because things were so serious, they didn't want to explain it over the phone. And he said, we'll explain when you get here. Then Officer Felmer confirms her boyfriend's name and confirms that it's Joey. And she asks, is he okay? Officer Felmer says something happened to Joey. and she asks, is he okay? Then she starts talking, and you're going to listen to her demeanor about how he had a manic episode, was crazy earlier, was upset about a court date with his son. And then she responds, she left earlier in the night around 7 o'clock, long before anybody came, not just the short time before. You'll remember, and you'll hear testimony, that she left at 9:52. But she tells Officer Felmer it was 7. When she left, she knew Joey was on the floor. She knew he was bleeding. She knew he needed medical care. She then goes on, and you listen to her demeanor, and you'll hear what she has to say about how that Joey thought she was cheating on him, that he wasn't on meds because they didn't come in the mail, and he didn't have them for 24 hours. And then she says, is he okay? She knew he wasn't. And you'll listen to her demeanor. Well, should I go to the hospital? Officer Felmer says, I don't know what his medical state is. You remember, he's standing outside, but he doesn't tell her. And she says, well, what do you mean his medical state? At one point, she says, did he take something? She knows. He was bleeding on the floor in the kitchen when she left. Officer Felmer says that she was found with friends. We know John Pfeffer and Christy Cleland. She knows because she's talking to John Pfeffer. That's whose phone she called. And Officer Felmer says that when he was with friends, he collapsed. And she gasps. Well, what does that mean? And you'll hear her tone, and you'll listen to her demeanor. And then she says, did he take something?
All right, I want to turn quickly to Florida, where the defense rested its case in the matriarch mastermind murder trial of Donna Adelson today. The jury will hear closing arguments tomorrow without ever hearing from Adelson. She's accused of plotting to kill her daughter's ex-husband, Dan Markell, back in July of 2014. Markell and Wendy Adelson were allegedly in the middle of a bitter child custody battle. But during today's testimony, 2 defense witnesses, Wendy's former divorce attorney and a family and marital law expert, testified to the contrary. They told the jury that Markell and Wendy resolved their issues with child custody amicably. However, family law attorney Kristen Adamson said post-divorce filings from Dan Markell became increasingly personal and hostile. Closing arguments, as I said, are scheduled to begin tomorrow morning. Now, if Donna Adelson is convicted of the top charge of first-degree murder, she could spend the rest of her life in prison without any possibility of parole. All right, we'll take a break here, folks. Coming up, Court TV, we're going to continue with opening statements in the kiss and tell murder trial of Samantha Krebs. The prosecutor talks about the conflict the 2 witnesses battled with for telling the police the truth about what happened to Joey. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, diving deeper into today's defense case, testimony in the trial of Donna Adelson. Catch up on everything you may have missed as our experts weigh in.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the case the whole country is talking about. What you need to know before we take you inside the courtroom each day in the matriarch mastermind murder trial.
Opening statements with Julie Grant, mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back, folks. Before we head back into court, I want to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor David Bruno. David, great to see you as always. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. And you know, we're watching opening statements by the state. And, you know, I was always taught from the very beginning that opening statements is really about telling a good story. That is what this prosecutor is doing, but there are varying ways you can tell the story. And she seems to be going into a lot of detail early on here as her first introduction to this jury. What do you make of her style of opening statement here?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the style, honestly. It looks like she's reading off of paper. She's very flat and monotone as well. You know, it's almost like that same tone all the way through. And, you know, attention span, juries, this is their first impression, really, of the state's case. And this is a dramatic set of events. And you have co-conspirators, and you have liars, and you have all the things. I mean, this is exciting. But it's just like the delivery, not necessarily the substance. She is getting very granular, and that's certainly the intention of an opening statement, is to preview the evidence. This is what you're going to hear. But for me, I want a little more excitement, Michael, because those people have been in the box. It's been a long day. It's going to be a long week or two, and they're going to need something to keep their attention up.
Yeah, I would agree, and I agree with sort of monotone. And you want to really signpost, and you want to go up and down in your inflections, let them know what's important, what's not, what to look for. So I couldn't agree more. All right, David, stand by. I want to go back inside that Wisconsin courtroom for more opening statements in the kiss and kill murder trial of Samantha Krebs. Right now, we're listening to the prosecution's open.
They say, John and Christy say that Sam leaned over and said, "Sorry, I love you." Now, Christy, that's the end of, you're going to hear the end of that interview, that version. And Christy gets interviewed about a few weeks later, just with Investigator Riddle, Investigative Keither, and without John present. In that interview, she'll talk about how Sam, the defendant, was standing over Joey, who was laying on the kitchen floor, and she sees blood. Christy will say, Sam said, "What are we supposed to do? Say. What are we supposed to say? He fell on a knife?" Nothing about him stabbing himself. And then Christy will say, Sam repeatedly said, "I can't go to prison." And before she leaves, she kisses Joey and says, "Sorry, I love you." Now, what's interesting is you'll hear from Investigator Ewell that the city of Appleton has traffic cameras located at a number of the main intersections. And Investigator Ewell with the Appleton Police Department will say that while they're investigating things that night, he's looking on the cameras that the Appleton Police Department has at intersections. And he will see Sam's vehicle, a Dodge Journey that has no license plate, and decals on the back window, which is going to be important. Driving down Northland towards another gentleman's house or apartment named Jeff Hayes. Jeff Hayes is about a 50-some-year-old guy, late 50-year-old guy, who is also friends with Sam. He also, in addition to being friends, he likes her too, and has a romantic interest in her at times. And you'll hear that they can see Sam's vehicle drive in that direction. Now, once it exits the city, they can't see where it goes. But throughout the investigation, investigators keep adding more information that they know. And so ultimately, they get a video of Jeff Hayes' apartment complex at Veterans Village. And you'll be able to see that Sam arrives at Jeff Hayes' apartment at 10:01, 2 minutes after the Appleton Police Department arrive at Joey's apartment. You'll hear that his apartment is down by the Fox Valley Tech. You'll see video of her meeting Jeff Hayes outside of his apartment, talking, having a cigarette, and you will be able to watch her demeanor. You will be able to see that she doesn't appear outwardly upset or emotional when she meets him. And those videos will show you the great lengths that Jeff Hayes goes to protect his friend Sam. So we have John Pfeffer protecting Sam. Now Jeff Hayes is going to protect Sam. You'll hear that there had been text messages and calls back and forth between John and Jeff before she arrived and after. You'll see videos of what Jeff Hayes does to protect Sam. He attempts to disguise her vehicle. He goes to great lengths to conceal the vehicle identification number located right in the front of the driver's seat, down in the window of the front of the vehicle. You'll see how he removes decals on her back window, those decals that investigator Yule identified driving down Northland. You'll see him as he takes them off, and all of a sudden they're gone. You'll see how he helps her conceal her appearance when she's outside on the patio. It's a covered patio, and how he tries to do that. And what's interesting is that video will also show you that shortly after Christy Cleland and John Pfeffer leave the Appleton Police Department after being interviewed after Joey dies, early that next morning, after a little while, where did they go? You'll hear testimony that they go to Jeff Hayes' apartment where Samantha is. You will hear testimony about how Sam continues to be protected by John and Jeff. John takes Sam's cell phone and wipes her phone of evidence. You'll hear how law enforcement learns she's at Jeff Hayes, because it takes a little bit for them to figure out where she went. Because again, those traffic cameras end up stopping, so they don't know where she continues to go after she leaves the city of Appleton and ends up in Grand Chute. And you'll hear that ultimately they find out that she's at Jeff Hayes's. So Sergeant Rudebeck will come in, he's with the Appleton Police Department, and he will talk about how he was doing some surveillance, and he's at Jeff Hayes' apartment complex, and he's observing and he's watching. And you'll hear testimony that Jeff Hayes comes out of his apartment on the 22nd of July, 4 days later, and he looks around, and you'll watch the video, and you'll see him motion for Sam after he checks to see if he sees law enforcement. But he doesn't. They watch him, he didn't see them. And they walk into the parking lot, and they're confronted by officers with the Appleton Police Department, and at that time, place Samantha Krebs into custody, 4 days after Joey was killed. You'll hear recorded calls of the defendant, comments she makes. And you'll hear how she continues to change her story and attempt to cover up the truth. All these different stories to try to cover up what really happened. That Samantha Krebs, the defendant, stabbed Joey Carnut, puncturing his heart and killing him. But there's one thing Sam didn't count on. She didn't count on the fact that John Pfeffer had an application on his phone that recorded when he walked into the apartment. She didn't count on investigators locating the recording of him arriving on John's phone when they searched his phone. She didn't count on the veterinary clinic across the street from the apartment complex having security video and being able to watch when people were coming and going. She didn't count on what John Pfeffer would say when he called 911, or the fact the Wisconsin State Crime Lab could put all of it together, the 911 call, John Pfeffer's video, or John Pfeffer's audio, and the video, to be able to corroborate and capture the truth. The truth of what really happened when John and Christy walked through that apartment. And you'll watch the security video with John's recording, and then you'll sit and wait for that 911 call.